Let me welcome you back from lunch to this Thursday afternoon fourth plenary session. Let me invite the chair for this session to come as Emeritus Professor Bamiru, formerly Vice Chancellor of University of Ibadan. You've all read his profile in the brochure. The one thing that stands out for me is the fact that he's a mechanical engineer, and that also reflects in his very meticulous approach to engagement with us. In all his contributions, he's been very straight to the point, the way we associate with mechanical engineers or engineers in general. He has a very strong reputation for initiating change at UI, and it's a reputation that has gone very far and very well known in the region. So we thank you very much, Emeritus Professor, for accepting our invitation to honor us with your presence. Thank you very, very much. We also have the keynote speaker. Where is he? I thought for a minute I lost you. Our keynote speaker is Professor Emmanuel Kwame Champo. Please join us. Emmanuel used to be at the University of Cape Coast many, many years ago until he decided to join the brain drain. He was hoping I wouldn't say that, but I've never forgiven him for this. I know that too well because when we decided to set up a College of Education at the University of Ghana, everybody I spoke to about finding a good person to come and be the first provost recommended this man. And I made every effort that a vice chancellor could make. The only thing I couldn't promise him was double the salary of everybody. I couldn't promise him that because I didn't have the resources. And he was very much a typical Ghanaian. He never said no to me, but he never said no, but didn't. Every time I invited him to a meeting, he would come and he would smile with me and then he would go away. Anyway, he's here. His reputation goes very, very far. From University of Ghana, he went to Sussex, where I met with him again. He didn't know I was in the meeting when he was invited, and then he found me in the meeting. Of course, you can imagine his embarrassment. And then from there, he's gone to the Open University as the director for the Center for Global Studies. So we have a very decent, well-accomplished panel that will follow this in the plenary. So I will leave it to the chair to invite the keynote speaker, and then after that we'll invite the other plenary speakers. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I think you have done the work of introducing, so I don't have to introduce them, only that to show appreciation that we're indeed, appreciative of your accepting to give the keynote address. Okay, am I also to quickly the panelists? After his own, okay. So, and sorry. I always have problem after lunch. You see, before lunch, okay, your heart pumps blood to your brain. After lunch, the heart pumps blood to your stomach. So, please don't sleep. Well, as already mentioned, that is Professor Akepo. Yeah, okay. From Open University, UK. And the title is Preparing the Future Student for Africa's Development. How should African universities respond through its research and pedagogy? That is the title of your, and I think we are all ears, to listen, to you, and from the background that has been given, we are quite confident that you will do justice, to the topic. So don't let me waste time, but to invite you to make your presentation. I think he has 30 minutes. How many minutes? 30 minutes.
Thank you very much, Professor Ite, and thank you for the introduction, and thank you for Chair. Thank you for the organizers of this conference for what is, I think, a very wonderful opportunity for us to talk about higher education in Africa. And also to say that to Professor Ite that one of the ways which I atone for my sins for not taking up the offer is to say yes to you anytime you call me. So I'm really pleased to be here. I would like to, my topic is looking at the future student for Africa's development. How should African universities respond? My areas of expertise is mainly really in international education and development. But when I was asked to speak on the topic in relation to students and the future, it gave me an opportunity to really reflect on some of my own experiences working in higher education and what I see as the challenges for Africa. But I also reflected on what ARUA's mission is, and I was looking at the background that they had provided and saw how important it is to the vision of the future students for Africa's development. Let me start by providing some historical context, which I think is important. And I think ARUA is a fulfillment of this historical context. And I'll lead it into what I'm going to say about my topic. On March 1957, Ghana's first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, addressed the old Legislative Assembly for the last time before Ghana's independence. Sorry. And I think what he said was very, very important for Africa. But unfortunately, this had been lost to many of us, and partly because of what the board chair of ARUA said about how the role of higher education, Africa's development, had been put on the sideline by the development organizations. But Nkrumah was very clear, and I would like to read what he said. I know you can read it here, but I would like to emphasize some things he said. He said, "We must seek an African view to the problems of Africa. This does not mean that Western techniques and methods are not applicable to Africa. It does mean, however, that in Ghana, we must look at every problem from the African point of view. Our whole educational system must be geared to producing a scientifically, technically minded people. I believe that one of the most important services which Ghana can perform for Africa is to devise a system of education based on at its university level on concrete studies of the problems of the tropical world." Those of us who have studied Nkrumah's vision for education in Ghana would recognize that Nkrumah placed higher education, university, research at the center of development. And I would like to throw a challenge to ARUA that as we talk about the needs of higher education, we shouldn't forget that the students we are receiving are coming from primary, secondary. We have to have a voice there. I sit on many global panels and do a lot of work with the World Bank and other development agencies. Higher education often is not talked about. And although the World Bank has shifted its tone a little bit, I think that we have to have an interest, a voice in what happens before the students reach us. If we don't, all the plans that we make, all the aspirations that we have would suffer a setback. So this is a challenge and a call to ARUA to make sure that in each country, in the countries in which we work, and at the global stage, our agenda, the vision we have for Africa is represented right from primary to secondary to university. Because you are not, the students who are coming to us are coming from a system that often needs the input of higher education. And the sad reality is that if you are going to have a better basic education system, a secondary education system, it depends on higher education. Where are your teachers going to come from? Where are your science teachers going to come from? Higher education. So if you don't place value on higher education, the products that you get would not be the products that you can work with. And I think Nkrumah was right when he said that the university must be the coordinating body for education research. And he said it would eventually associated with research institutes dealing with agriculture, biology, physical and chemical sciences. And only with a population so educated can we hope to face the tremendous problems which confront any country attempting to raise the standard of life in a tropical zone. And I think it's true today. And one of the things that is clear from what Nkrumah said is that there are three things that we can derive from that. The first is that he saw higher education for the newly independent Ghana to be used as a tool for producing a scientifically literate population. He also saw it as a way for tackling the environmental causes of low productivity. I think it's interesting he referred to it as environmental causes of low productivity, and for producing knowledge to harness Ghana's economic potential. I think we have to be very clear what higher education, the challenges that we face, and what higher education should be for. If we don't settle that question, then we are unable to derive programs and do research that will meet that need. And I think Nkrumah said it very clearly. I don't think this has changed. And as we engage with global North partners, higher education institutions, we have to go with a very clear mind of what we want as Africans and what we want to achieve. But be reminded, as Nkrumah said, that we have to look at our problems from an African perspective. And what does that mean? I think it's important because that is what we should be trying to do when we engage with our students and confront them with the problems and challenges that we face. But what are the new challenges and potential for Africa? It is very easy for us to talk about our challenges. And when I read the narrative for this conference, I realized that it's important that we highlight the challenges and how we meet it. But Africa has a lot of potential. But Africa also has a lot of solutions. And I would like to see maybe in a future conference where we meet and we talk about Africa's contribution to development, where we highlight some of the innovative approaches and research that we are doing. There are many scattered around the continent. We do need to celebrate that. And that is why I think Nkrumah meant by having African solutions for African problems and communicating that through our curriculum, through our teaching, through our research, so that the students we receive are prepared to deal with the problems that they find in our society. We have these new challenges. We have rapid urbanization. Africa is going to have some of the highest urbanization in the world. Population growth. We are going to have climate change issues. And I've picked on the climate change issue because when I was looking at this subject and I read that Africa is warming at a faster rate than the global average, it worried me. And I asked myself, how prepared are we to address this? What are the consequences of that for the future of the continent? And I think it's important that we bring this in our curriculum to represent what we think are the new challenges we face. But we are doing so with limited resources. And this is something else that we need to look at. So as I reflected on the challenges, and I thought about the challenges that our students are going to face in the future and higher education faces, one of the things that I realized very clearly that we are faced with a future that is not standing still. The days when we had students come in and we trained them and we knew for certain the world they were going to go into has changed completely. So this has implications for how we design our programs, whether in the physical, social sciences, in the arts, the future is not standing still. And some of the reasons for that have already been described or talked about in this conference, so I don't need to go over them. But Africa has an advantage. Africa has youth on its side. And this is where higher education comes in. We have to maximize the potential of this youth to be a key for Africa's future. It disheartens me when I see a lot of potential among young Africans, which is untapped, which we do not harness for our own growth and development. But the few that we find who are doing well, their talent, their contribution is being harnessed and used in the global north. Just last week, I met a Nigerian in Nottingham who studied from the University of Lagos here. And he had just moved to UK in the last 3 years. And he was already doing some innovative things. He had a startup. He was doing brilliantly. And I said, but why? He said, well, I learned all of this in Nigeria. And yet he's using that knowledge and skill to transform lives in the UK. The potential is here. The students we have everything that we need, the material we need to work with. It is our responsibility to respond to that potential that is in them. The world where we had jobs for life is over, I'm afraid. Producing students who can adapt and are resilient is what should drive what we do. In every curriculum that we design, we have to ask ourselves, where are these products going to end up? Very likely they are not going to do the jobs that we have in mind. By the time they graduate, the world they started with has changed. So that has to inform us on what we have to do. Creativity, innovation, increased opportunities created by climate changes should inform every aspect of our curriculum and our programs as we prepare these students for the future. I wanted to problematize the higher education curriculum and ask all of us who are designing curriculum, who are engaged in curriculum development in higher education, to consider a lot of the questions that have come out of this conference and ask ourselves whether we are behind the future in preparing our students for the future. Are we integrating courses to focus on key development areas such as sustainable agriculture, renewable energy, healthcare, innovative technology, entrepreneurship? And I have to say, you can read this question as if we are not. But as I looked across the continent, I looked at some universities, we are doing a lot of this already. And I think this way of looking at ourselves in deficit takes away from our potential. And there are a lot of universities that are innovating, that are doing great things to respond to this. We need to be able to bring that together and make sure that we prepare not only our students but our nations to face the uncertain future that lies ahead. Do we have a curriculum that produces students with a heightened sense of commitment to address Africa's development challenges? Anytime I travel from the UK, I go to Ghana and I'm sitting in traffic and I'm very angry that I'm sitting in traffic. But I'm also asking myself, what can we do about this? How are we training our scientists, our engineers to think about solving problems that we face? And I think this is what should inform the structure and the philosophy behind our engagement with our students. It's very important. But are we also designing courses to fit learning goals? Whether you're an engineer, a chemist, a scientist, a teacher, there are certain qualities that should inform our programs. Leadership, innovation, and critical thinking. And I have a few things to say about critical thinking. I also think we have to repurpose the higher education curriculum. I think that the days when we spoon-fed our students, where the typical professor stands up and dishes out his or her notes for students to write and reproduce, are long gone. They are over. And in fact, your university is not the only university that students have access to, because the boundaries of knowledge have been broken. Students can access courses or access information beyond your university. So we have to create conditions for our students to engage in a way that makes them responsible for what they learn. A cohesive curriculum which scaffolds students' learning by gradually reducing the amount of support and in which critical thinking is infused throughout rather than taught in a standalone module. There's a tendency for us to think we have to teach critical thinking here and there. And some of the research that I've seen suggests that sometimes students get confused because that's the mission of the university. The university says we want to teach critical thinking. You go to a department, they're doing the opposite. And yet you read the brochure of the university and it makes it very clear this is what we are about. We are not paying attention to our faculty and making sure that what we say is what they do, or they have the skills to be able to create the experiences and that our mission states. We need new curricula tailored to the specific needs of Africa, which challenges the deficit models of thinking of development in Africa. And this is something I have been fighting for in my own field. In my field, and those of you who work in poverty would know, they talk about the poor child. And you see images of the poor child of Africa in a lot of publications. I've been fighting against this because I think that when you talk about the poor child in the global north, you don't use the poor child. We actually have children who are living in poverty. Let's shift the emphasis away from the child, branding the child as poor, but actually children who are living in poverty and children who have agency. And once you begin to see them as children who have agency, you change the way in which you approach them and how you train them. And I think it's the same thing. Instead of seeing our students, the students who are coming to us as not having anything, we have to recognize a lot of them are engaging through social media and other technologies already. We should harness that potential to give them the best as far as their training is concerned. So I think this deficit thinking, this thing that Africa is behind, indeed it is behind, but Africa also has a lot to offer. And this is something that I often promote in my university. I want to spend 2 minutes on this conceptual framework because I think it's very helpful. When you look at a lot of the literature on higher education, there is an emphasis on critical thinking. But I think that we miss a point about critical thinking. Critical thinking is not something that you just think, you teach. I think it has to be embedded in the whole institutional culture. So I find this very helpful as a model where the inputs, the lecturers, their attitudes and teaching orientations are important. Their own critical thinking ability is important. And then you also consider the students. Their incoming critical thinking ability, incoming attitudes are important. And then you have the institutional environment. That is also important. So the academic experiences that students have. And often is a far cry from what we tell them they are going to experience. And I think we need to think about that when we're looking at the curriculum. Is our curriculum cohesive and progressive? Is it at an appropriate level of challenge? Are we promoting active and collaborative learning? Assessment often is the worst of it. We say all those things and we go back to the assessment processes that we used to use before, and which defeats the purpose of our critical thinking curriculum. And I think this is very important if we are going to have a real change. Interdisciplinary programs. I think we should be doing more of that. When I moved to the university, to the Open University, my background is international education, and the Pro-Vice Chancellor said to me, I want you to set up an interdisciplinary center. The big challenge is that we like to talk about it, but you ask academics who are very fiercely defending their territory to work in an interdisciplinary way, and you find that they are not prepared to do that, because they think their publication will suffer. They don't really know what this thing looks like, but it's very popular. So what I did was to set up a center, what we call the Center for the Study of Global Development. And the first thing I said is that global development is not the global south. We're not going to talk about global south. Global development is global development. There's poverty everywhere. In this center, we try to say that we want issues about poverty and development which cuts across, because we can learn from the north and from the south. That's a mind shift. We have to let our students know that the problems of development in Africa are not peculiar to Africans. There's poverty everywhere. How we deal with our poverty problems can be solutions for the global north. We have to infuse that confidence in our students through our curriculum. So I set up these hubs, research hubs. And although my colleagues work in their different departments, they all congregate around these hubs so that we can provide a space for us to do collaborative work. And I think we need to do that. And we've brought our students on board so that the students understand what does it mean to work collaboratively. What does it mean to do research collaboratively? And I think it's important that we emphasize that. And I think we also have to rethink the pedagogy. And this one, I also go back to the institutional culture. It needs to play a key role in shaping a collective understanding of what higher education teaching is about and what the objective of university education should be. I think this has been asked, but I think we need to probe it. What is the objective of university education? I don't think we've reflected very much on that. We're still holding back onto some of the things we are comfortable doing. But I think the horses have bolted out of the door. If we don't change, change will be forced upon us. And I think we have an opportunity, and ARUA has this opportunity to lead the way in providing that change. The next thing I want to talk about is regional exposure. I would like to see more opportunities for our students in higher education, experience learning, teaching in other universities and research. I don't know, maybe ARUA has this on its mission, but I think we should promote a lot more of that. When I was doing some work with the Ministry of Education in Ghana, I saw that there's a lot of, you have a lot of early career development experts come to work in the Ministry of Education with their masters, they are development economists. And I said, but where are the development economists of the University of Ghana? I think they are better suited here, you know. But we are not reaching out and giving those opportunities for our young graduates. In the same way, I think we need to really expose our students to other cultures of learning within our network of universities. So I hope that within ARUA, we can ensure that our students are able to go have these experiences in other universities. We need to foster a regional mindset and cross-cultural competencies among our students. The question about our students, the problem we face about our students then acquiring skills and going to the north, partly also is because we don't introduce them sufficiently to some of the problems about development and how they can be a part of the solution. Why is it that when I was in Sussex, I was receiving a lot of students coming to study development, education, development in Sussex and not in the University of Lagos, University of Ghana? Why is it? And I took my vice chancellor and a team to the University of Ghana, and we wanted to form a partnership. And I was very clear the University of Sussex wanted a partnership that was going to bring some resources to the university. I said, no, that should not be the agenda. We have to look at how we can contribute to the University of Ghana, and the University of Ghana can contribute to Sussex. And when I don't know whether, Professor Ita, I've told you this, when I brought a team to the University of Ghana, privately they told me, wow, we didn't know you had such fantastic facilities and opportunities here. So I make it always to bring the global North researchers to Africa and show them the best of Africa. It's important that we do that because in any partnership that we form with the North, we have to put our strong foot forward. We have challenges, indeed we have challenges, but we have to demonstrate that we are able and capable of addressing some of those challenges and use that as a point of engagement. There are a lot of things the global North can learn from us. And in my center, we do research, encourage research, Nigeria, UK, wherever. It's not looking at poverty issues in the West and then it's together. And there's a lot that we learn from that, and I think we should do more of that. I'm coming to the end of my presentation, and I just have one or two things to add. I think research and the student experience is very important. We should not make a distinction between research and teaching. If our teaching is not influenced and infused by research, we are doing something wrong. It's very important. And what should infuse that teaching is the research that we are doing, finding solutions to the problems that we have. Those of us who work in international education, we know that there is currently a focus on the learning crisis and solutions that are being prescribed by international organizations. I sit on some of those boards. You can see from my profile that I sit on some of those. And the problems of learning are being talked about and designed in the North. And then when I come to Ghana and I meet my colleagues or other countries, and I ask them, what is it? What do you know about the problems that we have? They have better understanding of our problems, but they are not at the table. They are not really promoting that research that can address those problems. I think we do need to really enter that discussion with knowledge from our research to engage meaningfully And we have to be there to help our partners understand what our problems are and what we are prescribing as solution from our research. And I think ARUA for me, is a response to Nkrumah's vision, that we would lead the way in providing those kind of solutions that can give hope to Africa. And it's already there. We have centers of excellence that are being set, that are already there. I know Professor Wandara and his team, when we had the COVID, we did wonderful research. We had the African population health. We should be celebrating these centers. And we should be using this to inform our governments, our society, that we have solutions that can address the problems that Nkrumah was talking about. But we also have to look about the future. What is going to hit Africa is going to be a very big problem. But the potential is that we have the resources, the human resources. And the human resources can only be released by higher education. And I think we have to send that message right to the global partners and our partners. And that's our responsibility as we look into the future. I think we also have to identify and invest in our best students. If you see some of the good students, please, let's put all our resources behind them. Let's give them the support they need. Let's give them the opportunity. Some of our brightest minds go to Europe and other places, and people see their potential. Last month, I met a Ghanaian in Oxford. He's a quantum, he specializes in quantum, not quantum physics, quantum computing. He's 25, and he's been sent by a big company in California to set up their subsidiary in Oxford. He's 25. And he was telling me what quantum computing can do. He's Ghanaian. I was very proud of him. And I thought, my goodness, why don't you come and do this in Africa? You know, we have some of the brightest minds. We heard from our keynote about what you're doing in Bristol. And in my last slide, I'll show you that already African universities are doing work in AI. Already, because I was trying to find out what is there. We shouldn't wait for someone to tell us this is how we should use our network to begin to respond to our challenges using AI. And that's my last slide. And I've titled it, Artificial Intelligence, Friend or Foe to Higher Education in Africa. I think we have, when I looked at some of the things that were happening, and this slide shows you some of the things that are already happening in some of these universities, and I think they are countless. So it's not as if we are not in the game. We are there, but we are not making our voices heard. I would like to see a center that looks at the potential for AI for Africa's development, that ARUA champions and brings the best minds together as maybe a center of excellence to address those problems that we have. And I think that as we do that, we will be leveraging some of the potential that exists in our environment, in our resources, to tackle some of the problems that we have. I think it's always easy for us to talk about our universities as if nothing has changed. But if we just look back to COVID, a lot has changed in our world. But I'll end by saying that there is often a disconnect between what we say in our brochures, in our promotions, and what our students actually experience. And also, I was preparing for this, I was looking at a lot of publications, and this is really consistently the case, that we have to make sure that our curriculum, our pedagogy is aligned. We are investing in our lecturers and our professors to bring them up to date. The students who are coming to your classroom already have a lot to offer. They don't only have to look at what you have to offer. They can look elsewhere. So use that resource. Knowledge is now boundless. The boundaries of knowledge creation and knowledge use is not residing in one university. And therefore, we should use the network that we have in ARUA. If you take all the universities that are involved in ARUA, that's a huge resource. That's huge potential. The centers of excellence that we have set up, we should expose our students to these centers of excellence. We should celebrate them. And I hope that this will create a new generation of students who would look into the future with hope and fulfill what Kwame Nkrumah said, that if we are going to solve African problems, we have to look at them through African lenses. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I think you are a professor.
Sorry?
You are a professor. It's clear. Well, I'm sure you all agree with me that that was an excellent presentation. Actually, you turned me to be a student because I was taking note. I'm going to second page, taking note. Because those were all important points that have been made. But anyway, what I'm supposed to do is just to provide a summary and leaving it to you to come in with suggestions, questions, and But one thing that interested me was the starting point. To say, as far back as 1957, that President Kwame Nkrumah, stated that look for every problem from the African point of view. And of course, African point of view being deployed to solving such problem. I think we must not lose sight of that. But that has also changed over time. I quickly said, okay, how would that relate to the present? I said, maybe the way to relate to the present is all these, I think somebody suggested that the 1,000 universities, world-class universities, should say that, no, they are no longer world-class. Now, what is world-class? I think some researchers in the US try to answer that question. What is a world-class university? And what did they arrive at? A world-class university is a university that you know when you see it. And then they went further to say that, when you see it, then they couldn't define it. And they now say that, okay, a world class is one in which everybody wants one, or to be one, but they don't even know how to be one. But what is important is that when you look at the definition of world class, or what qualifying as world class, what sort of problem do they expect us to be addressing to be world class? From the research point of view, they expect you to do what they call high-end research and so on. But the thinking now in the African direction is that what we have to be, we are not saying that you shouldn't do trying to compete. No. But what is being said now, which is along what Nkrumah has said in there, is that our universities must be transformed into what they call service-intensive universities. That is, development universities. Universities that are ready to address the identified, challenges. That is what, I can see in his presentation. Then some other important areas, he has mentioned, curriculum. If we are really to prepare the student for the future, but people say that even the future is already here, then the first port of call is the curriculum. And from what he has said, our curriculum, from a study that we did, when we studied some universities where they had a high level of graduate employability, most of their graduates were 90%, this is in Scotland, 90% of the students graduate being employed within 1 year, close to 80%. And we know the situation here. So we look at graduate employability. Suffice it to say that at the end of the day, we came to the conclusion that, okay, for our graduates to be employable, the skills that they require, I think people have mentioned the skills and so on. There are 2 categories. and some of the papers presented earlier had pointed to this, what they call hard skills and soft skills. Critical thinking is part of soft skill. Hard skills are those that any program you are taking, those that are core to that program. If you're an engineer, we know what you should wear. If you're a medical doctor or what have you. But what is important is that we arrive at the conclusion that our curriculum must be outcome-based. And what's an outcome-based curriculum? It means that it is one in which any course you are teaching, you must ask yourself, what are the deliverables? Maybe in terms of the scale engagement. I think those are the sort of things, that you have pointed to. But most importantly, another aspect, it is one thing to have a curriculum that will, address all these issues. It's another thing to get lecturers that will operationalize the curriculum. The question now is, some people have said, are we lecturers or teachers or facilitators? And from what you have said, maybe 15 years ago, we are lecturers. Giving lecture like this, and we see ourselves as being at the cutting edge of knowledge. And what we are giving the student, no. My own personal experience has showed that, no, you are not the only one having the knowledge. There can be in that class students that know more about the subject than you. And that can be proved in a number of instances. In other words, lecturers are not now, they are more or less referred to as facilitators. You facilitate, and then you allow the students, to move. And if I can quickly give an example of my experience of that. At University of Ibadan, I have been introduced, I'm a mechanical engineer. First degree students, when they're doing their final year, we give them projects. They're not serious projects, like masters or PhD. No, just to expose them. So I gave a project on simulation, of stress simulation. 1 year, one student took it. Well, he tried, but not quite there. The following year, I gave it to another student. He too tried. Then third year, I said, okay, this will be the last time. I gave it to his. I know that those projects, they were supposed to work on them for one session, 2 semesters. I gave it third time. I gave it to a student. 3 weeks from the first semester. The student came to me and said, sir, I've solved the problem. I said, you have solved the problem? What do you mean by you have solved the problem? I said, oh, you don't understand the problem yet. He said, no, I understand. I like it and so on. So I said, okay, you should come to my office and let's discuss. I was seated at my table. As he was coming through the door, the computer he had under his armpit was so superior to my own that I know, yes, this will be a problem. So I said, is that your computer? Oh, he said, yes, it's my computer. Wow. Okay, come and show me what you said you have solved. Suffice it to say that by the time I sat down by his side, and he started, this was something that was supposed to be just color separation. No, he was even giving the point. I said, yeah, look, how did you do this? Suffice it to say that it went beyond what I gave him, I expected from him. And when I announced, how did I arrive at it? It went for what we said, industrial attachment. Very, very important. Students being able to, do this IT. The platform I taught them in class, which I expected him to use to some extent, where he worked was a software developing outfit. And he was exposed to a more sophisticated platform. I discussed this later. I said, I gave him a cutlass, and the man had a bulldozer. So when I learned, oh, wow, you had that. Okay, I said, this is great. By the way, can you help me install it on my system? No, even before then, I said, how about the platform that I taught you in class? That platform. I said, okay, I understand. Don't say it. But this new platform, can you help me to install it on my system? He looked at my system. I said, you better try. You must install it. 2-3 days after he brought the system, he has already installed it. Excellent. I mean, of course, I quickly learned fast and so on. Then I said, okay, John, I'll be going to the class to introduce students to the new platform, which I claim to be coming from my own research. But I warned him, if you dare let your mates know where this new something comes, you'll be coming. So I just use this as an illustration that some of the students, they can know, but that is it. We don't look at ourselves as if we have failed. No. There's now need for humility that you can learn, from. And when our students are like that, the sky is the limit. So I think he has really, then our research being interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, there's no doubt. Then I just finally, my comment, the idea of centers of excellence. Somebody mentioned our World Bank about maybe 10 years, 15 years ago, more or less derailed us into saying that university education not cost effective, go to the lower cadre. But the same World Bank, in a reverse, came to say that Africa will need higher education and research to address the developmental challenges. And how did they do that? They came to Africa. There's this, I don't know how many of you are aware of these so-called African Centers of Excellence. And the way they package the centers to address developmental issues, most especially SDPs, Sustainable Development Goals. Suffice it also to say that they created a center of excellence in one university, Redeemers University, here in Nigeria, and a number of other universities. They had, Redeemer University was to address, they have this genomics, center for, genome of infectious diseases. And that university worked on it and so on, developed the capacity. How did that capacity come to help us as a nation? Not even beyond. When we had Ebola, that university was the one that deployed the capacity, research capacity that built to solve the problem of Ebola. So that's the type of thing we're talking about. The research that can address, our problems. So I think I leave it to, for more to that will create environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Chair. May I invite the panelists for the plenary? We have Gordon Awandari. We have Jerome September, and Roberta. Thank you very much. So Jerome is speaking first. Jerome is the Dean of Students at WITS, and then Gordon is the Pro Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs at the University of Ghana, and then Roberta is a Professor of Creative Economics from King's College, London. So let's start with you, Jerome.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to share some thoughts with you. The time is already? Okay. To share some, sorry, I just got distracted by the timer over here, which I didn't expect. It's a really wonderful opportunity to be here. And I think quite a bit of what Prof. Kwame has shared also finds resonance in some of the points that I'm raising. I think my whole talk is probably the first line. Let's break down the walls between how we think about the academic affairs and the academic life of the student and the student affairs life or the co-curricular life, the out-of-classroom life of the student. I'm going to move towards the last in the circle, which is really around practice, and I want to just share a journey that we're finding ourselves on as the University of the Witwatersrand, around how we're thinking about this, and one or two of the things that we are playing with in the space as we think about it. So in my world as a dean of students, besides being the one who's called when there's drama, and I kind of walk into the Vice Chancellor's office and I say, Prof, your naughty child is here, and then the conversation starts. It's also important that we know that some of the work is informed by theory and some academic work that informs some of what we do. And while I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the theoretical frameworks, I do think it's important that I at least touch on that. And so I'm going to do a little bit around theory and some of the discourses. And in the discourse box, I've put in there how we think about artificial intelligence, the future of work, massification, social justice, all of these big issues, and hopefully how that informs some of our practice. So I'm going to go quick over the first couple of slides by way of context. 1.3 billion people, 60% or so under the age of 25, this is a continent, and around a 9.5% participation rate. For South Africa, 60 million people, a growing youthful population, a 34% official unemployment rate, 34%. And for young people, it's way over the 50%, close to the 60% mark, if not more. We have 26 public universities, but a participation rate of around 17%, pending on the year's stats that you pull, but around there. But even this is racially skewed, given our particular context. This is stuff that we all know and that we all, I think to a large extent, agree with, that the importance of higher education in that it doesn't only benefit the individual, but that there is a societal impact and a societal benefit to it, and the things that we talk about around the high level of civil participation and the relevance of this. And then, of course, also the youth population continues to swell. And what that means is also that there's an intensifying demand for expanded access to good quality higher education. So at my university, for example, and this is what probably all the institutions in South Africa can tell you, at my university, we get about, for next year, we have about 140 or so thousand applications for 5,000 seats, right? And that's the story of almost every institution back home. And so how do we deal with this? Of course, the African Union has put higher education and education as part of its Agenda 2033 in terms of the aspirationals. I'm going to go quite faster now. But it is this, and someone referred to this yesterday, and I think Nelson Mandela probably says it best, around the power of education as a very powerful weapon to transform and to provide mobility to young people. And so given this, I think that student success should in fact be at the center of our conversations and at the center of how we think about the future of higher education, how we think about what it is that we do. So student success, which I'll define shortly. And so how do we think about that? And if we make that sort of the focus, what does this mean for how we work and how we are organized? I'm not going to go through this. We have 41,000 students, of which 57% are female, and in the first year class, 50% of its first year students are first generation university students. And we talk about the people-centered university, the student experience that must be cosmopolitan, and the development of lifelong friendships, appreciation for arts and culture. We talk about nurturing of critical thought, robust engagement, and so on. And of course, we know that in terms of the future of the world of work, these are some of the contextual future issues that we have to think about. So automation and artificial intelligence, the gig economy, demographic shifts, green jobs, emphasis on health and wellness, and so on as we think about the future. And within that, of course, how we think about the skills that are required as we think about this future. And of course, just some thoughts around the workplace of the future. You know, this idea of being more flexible, information that previously was available to a select few now being available to all, and how we think about how events in the global world, kind of in the global environment, impacts on what it is that we do in our own institutional environment. So student success for us is then really about graduating students who holds the identified attributes. So those graduate attributes, and how we think about what those graduate attributes might be. And so the focus here is almost on the end result. Who are we graduating? What attributes do they have? What kind of people are they in the end? So, according to Tinto, this is not the work that can be left to chance. It's not just going to happen. It's not a random occurrence. It's something that we must invest in, and that we must be quite intentional around. And so, of course, if you link that to a student-centeredness, then it does become about everything. So it is about the facilities, the institutional culture, our way of being. But of course, the IOL also tell us that a human-centered approach is important as we think about the future. So we all talk about the arrival of the robots. And what does that mean as we think about our own place in the world, and what it is that we're doing in the kind of future that we want to construct? So this idea then of equipping our students with lifelong learning skills. So this adaptable new world, this new way that is about adapting to, and so how do we use some of these artificial intelligence instruments to our benefit? So it's about breaking of the walls. And when we break down these walls, we often discover this in terms of the student experience, right? Many islands, fantastic support in place, but they're often in islands all over the university. And we pray that the student can swim, because the student must find their way to these islands of support, right? So when you've broken down the wall, and we actually now in conversation with each other and so what we did was we just brought everyone that we thought is doing anything in student affairs, anything in student support, anything. And we began to map what people are doing. And then even as the Dean of Student Affairs, I have this institutional view. I'm also shocked at some of the things that are happening. And so it's wonderful support, but not connected. And so we have to think about this idea of a systems almost thinking approach towards what does the student success system look like? And what are the subsystems that supports that? And what are the sister systems that needs to connect to that? So if you talk research as perhaps a sister system, how does it connect to the student support, student success system? And then the realization that actually in these systems, they are people. It's not a robot or a machine or anything, it's people. And so how do we bring people together and connect people across the institution around a common purpose, and the common purpose being student success. And then, of course, the light bulb moment come, when we're able to come up with a sort of framework that puts the student at the center, but that begins to map the various areas of support on the success journey that is needed. So academic, the material needs, the personal development, the health and wellness, and then all the sub or the sister systems and processes that sits around it that needs to support it. So how we think about communication, how we think about the person that answers the phone call from this distressed young person somewhere who's asking about important issues or just wants general information. And then we discover that actually, when you break down the wall, it's not only that it's all over the place, but new possibilities emerge. Because we see a tree with these green leaves that suggest perhaps a new season, a new way of coming together. And so we started thinking around the first year, and we know that the first year is an important year. So how do we think about that transition? If 50% of the WITS first year class are first generation students, then how do we grapple and think about their transition into the university and how we support that first step? Because it is critical that the first step is well supported, because that will inform the strength of the second step. So we had to think carefully around that. And so we came up with a Gateway to Success program that tries to pull all of this together. So the academic offerings, where we now need to grapple with digital abilities. Last night I read the latest copy of our draft of the First Experience survey, and in there I picked up a comment from a student that said, it's great to learn about these things online, but can someone take us into the lab and just show me where to switch the computer on? Right? Because we make assumptions that because they can use the smartphone, and they're very savvy on the smartphone, that they can also use the computer. And there are some very basics around the computer. So how do we think about digital abilities in this digital world? How do we think about academic integrity in the context of AI? So do we simply ban ChatGPT, or do we engage with students around what academic integrity looks like and how we think about integrity in this new world that we find ourselves in? And then there's the Climate Change and Me program, where it's about first-year students across the university engaging with climate change, sustainability, the environmental issues, the future of the world. So it's a common curriculum for those first 2 weeks where they grapple with these issues from multidisciplinary kind of inputs. And it's a writing intensive course, because part of that is to also then identify, and they do it on the learning management system, so that they can also learn to use the online resources that's available, including the library, before classes start. And they get a WITS short course certificate upon successful completion of that. In the student life offerings, it is then about wellness, holistic development, the diversity, this developing a sense of attachment, of belonging, of being important within the space. And it's now made us begin to think, as a research university, how do we also think about this for our postgraduate students? Because the assumption, of course, is often that the postgraduate student, they mature, they'll find their way, and the reality is that many of them find themselves lost. I'm going to go faster. Then also in the entrepreneurship development space, and I want to challenge the notion that the only way to economically participate is to find a job. You come into university, we do stuff to you, you leave, and there'll be a job waiting for you on the other side. It's also about how we think broader about economic participation. And so in the entrepreneurship development space, some work we're doing as part of a network around entrepreneurship development. This particular group is a group of students from Nigeria, this university, University of Lagos, WITS, and Solplaat University in South Africa, where they were together solving problems. So an identified problem that they started with online, and we then had them in Johannesburg for a couple of days, where jointly they began to grapple with how do we solve these sorts of African problems as a group. And this is within the area of the DVC research. So again, breaking of walls. My second last slide, as I go faster, is in the area of health and wellness. And so again, thinking about health and wellness, not just from a student services, student support point of view. And in fact, the strategy was developed by calling together the academics, the academic experts, the academic advisors, the academic heads of school, and having multiple conversations across the institution, and having that inform the mental health strategy as one that sits around it's everyone's business to care. It is all of our business to make sure that we do what we can to kind of ensure that our students are fine. The last picture there is from an event that we held, and then I do need to get what we're working towards. My last slide, Prof. I have to show this one. I showed you an island all over the place. Let me close the gap on the island. This is what we're working towards. And this is what we must work towards. Fewer islands. Fewer islands. Perhaps bigger, but fewer. But importantly, these islands must be connected to each other. So that if I have to do a referral because it's not within my mandate, that it's actually an informed deferral. So that the student doesn't spend the day walking the campus to find that place that we referred you to. So a connected island, and we need to think about the bridges that we build and the compass in the hand of the students to help them navigate our institutional space. And so for me, I hope what did come across is that from my viewpoint, how we prepare our students, our institutions, it's about student success, placing the focus on the success of the student, linked to the skills around and the attitudes around lifelong learning in a really interconnected way. But it has to be a focus on humanity and who we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have actually broken down the walls. Because we have seen this, and then, of course, your concept of success, which is, I'm sure it will be part of the take-home for most people, here. Now, I think the plan is to go ahead, okay? For the other presenters to make their presentation, and then later we do, sentences. There's no doubt that, it's an important message that, and I'm sure our universities in varying degrees are doing some of the things in there, but I like the focus on success, student success, and the sort of things that came into the package to ensure student success. So I'm sure during the discussion, we'll have opportunity, for at least interrogating some of the things that he has presented. So do I invite the second speaker? Yes? So I should be able to introduce you now.
No problem.
Forward and backward. Forward and backward.
Okay. Good afternoon. Whilst the chair is trying to find my name, I can just introduce myself.
No, stay. You have seen the topic, what is to present. But just in case, preparing students for the world of competitive research.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah. Good afternoon to you all. It's a pleasure to be back here. I was at the last meeting in Pretoria, and I'm very happy to be here and to reconnect with the community. Thank you to ARUA for inviting me again. Last time when I was at the conference, we were talking about COVID and the work that we had done on COVID, which Professor Champo mentioned. Today I want to talk more about our general research training at the University of Ghana. Before I became Pro-Vice Chancellor, I started a center, one of the World Bank centers that Prof mentioned, similar to ASGID at Redeemers. And over the last 10 years, we built capacity for research and trained hundreds of young African PhD students, postdocs, master students, and so on and so forth. Now, as Pro-Vice Chancellor Academic Affairs, I get to see the institutional view of all these activities. And so what I've put together about 15, 14 slides of just what I've observed throughout the process and what works well in the unique context of an African research ecosystem. I think Professor Champo, in quoting our first president, I think he made my point that the context is different and that training researchers for Africa to live in Africa takes a lot more than just training PhDs. Many of us trained overseas, and when we came back, we had to learn additional skills in order to cope and adapt and to be successful on the continent. All right, so just to give you a little bit of context, University of Ghana, the premier university in Ghana, with all due respect to Lagos, it's a big university, about 76,000 students, and of these, about 10,000 are graduate students or postgraduate students. And the reason why I'm showing this is because about 10 years ago, led by Professor Aite, the university reoriented itself with a goal to becoming a world-class research-intensive university. And in this case, the research is also service-oriented, so Prof, don't worry. The reason why I'm showing this is to show where we are in trying to ramp up research training, which is the postgraduate wing of our institution. And just for further context, our university, the graduate programs are coordinated by a School of Graduate Studies, which sits independently of the academic units. And the academic programs are delivered in the academic units through what we call the colleges. We have 4 colleges: College of Humanities, Health Sciences, Basic and Applied Sciences, and the College of Education. So there's no need for me to tell you why it's important to build research capacity, but I just wanted to put down these 6 objectives, which I think I've learned through the process. These are some of the critical things we need to be doing in building research capacity for Africa. First, we need to create an environment that supports quality research training and the development of leaders. In Africa, because of the depth in terms of the scarcity of research leadership, we need to be training our researchers to not only just be researchers, but to be leaders. When I studied in the US, we had people who just wanted to be in the lab. They don't want to be head of department, they don't want to be head of a lab, they just want to be in the lab, okay? In Africa, you can't afford that because we need leaders. So we have to train them to not only know how to be technical people, but also to lead. So we need an environment that fosters that type of leadership. We need to be more inclusive, promote more diversity. I think the session that was held here before lunch, they talked about women not doing archaeology, okay? So it's not only archaeology. We have a scarcity of women in research in general on the continent, and we need to be intentional about promoting women and including women in research training and building capacity in that direction. We need to give confidence to our young people. Again, I think one of the speakers mentioned this. They need to be confident. They need to be able to be bold and propose innovative research ideas and do research that nobody has done before. When we were students, many of our seniors used to do research that says, this was done in China, but it's never been done in Africa. it was shown that fatty acids caused diabetes in China, but it's never been done in Africa. So the goal of my project is to demonstrate that this would also occur. But we don't need that type of research. We need our students to be bold and to be original and to propose new ideas that can solve our problems and not just try to replicate what others have done anywhere. We need to equip them with a skill set to be independent. You know, when I came back to the University of Ghana to start doing research, what I learned very quickly was that if you wanted to do a grant, you had to know the process from A to Z, including budgeting, filling out the NIH forms. You had to know everything. When I was helping my supervisor in the USA to write grants, he just had to write the science and then everything else is fine. Okay? But in Africa, you have to learn to be independent because you cannot rely on the system because the systems are not robust enough yet. Many institutions, including University of Ghana, are building the systems, but you have to be independent. You have to be able to do A to Z. And that is the type of training we need to be providing to our research. We need to empower them to be competitive. So, again, this was mentioned by earlier speakers, and I think my work is done there. We cannot have students who are not ambitious enough and think that, you know, being successful is doing research and winning TED Fund grants alone. You need to have students who can compete for grants on a global scale, who can write NIH grants, who can win Wellcome Trust grants. And again, that is part of the training, the orientation, and the academic environment that you create. We need to build a network of scientists, okay? One of the most important things we have to do as Africans is to work together. ARUA and other institutions are doing that very well. But we have to start this from the training. When we have graduate students, we need to network them. We need to let them, you know, cry together and laugh together. And that's how they would maintain their partnerships, you know, going forward. How do you create a dynamic research ecosystem? And one of the most important things is to have, centers of excellence. And again, I think Professor Champo mentioned this. You need clusters of excellence. You need, units that, serve as theaters for high quality research. And that, on the institutional level, creates a very dynamic environment. You need to have a system where in the same space, you have interns, you have master's students, you have PhD students, you have postdocs, and you have the PIs themselves. Because that dynamism is important for learning, okay? Students learn from each other. Master's students will learn from PhD students. PhD students learn from postdocs, and postdocs learn from the PIs. And there's also learning downwards, but you need that mentorship and supervisory training in the environment. You need to promote interdisciplinarity. Professor Champo mentioned this as well. We need to break down the barriers. Students in the Department of Philosophy should be co-supervised by people from computer science and physics. Okay? We need to encourage these types of partnerships in the supervision of students because the innovation in research comes when different disciplines intersect. We need to encourage faculty to bring grants. Prof. Ite, when he was Vice Chancellor, he used to threaten that departments that had no grants should not run PhD programs. Okay? And that would be a hard one in our context, but it is true that you cannot provide quality training in a resource-poor environment if the students do not have the opportunity to turn on the computer or to turn on the PCR machine or to turn on the sequencer or to use a centrifuge. Then the learning is abstract and you cannot develop solutions that way. We need to promote students to write for grants, starting from small grants, internally, external fellowships, and also to help them to participate in grant writing activities of faculty. This is something that's very important. In the University of Ghana, our Office for Research, Innovation and Development, together with our School of Graduate Studies, have recently instituted a graduate student grant scheme. And this is to foster that spirit of competitiveness and grant writing for students to start to try out for grants. I think I've mentioned many of these, but mentorship is very important. This has also been mentioned throughout this process. We need to be intentional about providing mentorship to students. In our program, we have a mentorship database that includes all our collaborators, both local and international, and we pair them up with students. These are separate from their supervisors. These are people that you can just have a chat with every month or every 2 months to talk about their general well-being, to talk about their future plans, and to just bounce ideas off them. And this has been exceptionally helpful. For those who are local, we actually give them a budget to go and have dinner with their mentors every now and then. And that has really helped the students to see a different perspective and to help their general well-being. I also want to mention the 4-year PhD program. As part of our new strategy, we changed from a 3-year PhD program to a 4-year PhD program, and that then includes 1 year of coursework. And that, again, even though there are arguments both ways against and for having coursework for PhD, for us, we think it has helped quite a bit in order to standardize the knowledge, amongst the students, and also to help in peer learning. In some of our programs, you would have in the same class, you have a medical doctor, you have a veterinary doctor, you have a biomedical engineer, you have a chemist, okay? And even though they come from different backgrounds, they come and they learn from each other. And the coursework allows them to also, bring everybody to the same level so that they're ready for their research. So these are some of the important things that we need to do. I wanted to mention our doctoral academy. I think Jerome mentioned about the fact that we have different islands that are separate. The way at the University of Ghana we've tried to deal with this is to have what we call the Pan-African Doctoral Academy, which provides some of these support systems for the students. So over the last 8 years, more than 4,000 students have benefited from this from various institutions across the continent. But the purpose is really to, add on to the students all those soft skills and give them an opportunity to access all the facilities that Jerome talked about that are all scattered across the university system. So they learn about grant writing, they learn about their psychosocial well-being. They get to chat with each other from different disciplines. They get time with mentors to have what we call mentor chats. They're able to do mock vivas. When they have their mocks, they're able to meet together and have mock vivas. So it provides a platform for them to work together. And then they have what we call the doctoral schools, which provide different modules to address specific needs of students, which the students can take as they need. I would end by just giving an example using the World Bank Center, which I started. It's called WACBIP, it's called West Africa Center for Cell Biology of Infectious Pathogens. In addition to the World Bank, we're supported by the Wellcome Trust, Delta's program, H3 Africa, NIHR, ARUA. We're recently part of the ARUA, the Guild Clusters of Excellence. We're partners in several of the centers. And over the last 9 years, we have provided fellowships to 350 young scientists from across the continent. And you see on the map here, master's, PhD, postdoc. And this, we started with the World Bank, but because of the success of the model, we were able to attract funding from across different funders to provide these fellowships to students from across the continent. What we have also done is to track those who have graduated. And you would see that if you look at the master's students, nearly all of them have either continued to do a PhD or they are employed somewhere, which is a validation of the kind of training that we've given them. In addition, we track where they are, and you see that just about half of them have remained on the continent. Others, those who have gone for PhD. If you look at PhD graduates, nearly 90% of them, have remained in research or academia. You have the vast majority of them 80% of them being on the continent. So we are making progress in building the capacity. If you look at the postdocs, 99% are into research. They've moved on, they have their own grants, they've started their own research. And more importantly, 76% of them are on the continent. So the message is that we need to create a unique training environment that suits our needs and that addresses our challenges. And we need to equip the students with the tools to be able to compete globally and to be able to have a sustainable research career. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This really has turned out to be, it's not looking like an afternoon after lunch. Because I still see everybody, nobody is sleeping. And I must commend those lecturers, the speakers. You make sure that you engage everybody. So thank you very much for that presentation. I'm sure there'll be a number of comments and questions. So the last presenter is Professor Roberto Comenia, okay? Professor of Creative Economics, Department of Culture, Media and Creativity of the King's College, London. Title, It Takes a Village, Supporting Creative Graduates in and Beyond the Creative Industry. I can hardly wait for that village.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Forward. Perfect. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Hi, everyone. I hope you can stand another presentation. So, this presentation summarizes a lot of research that's been happening in the last 10 years, partially for myself in the UK, but a lot of it happening collaboratively across a lot of African university partners. So hopefully it will be an inspiring way to look at how we collaborated. The focus of the research starts very, very long time ago. This is my drawing, 1984, when I was 6. I started primary school. My first, thank you. Clearly, I wasn't that good, but I was writing, when I grow up, I want to be an artist. And that's me painting, obviously. And my brother, who was just 6 years older than me, he wasn't an economist, but he told me that was a bad choice because artists are poor and they only get famous when they die. So that sort of told me I should have gone somewhere else. But this is quite a story because it's really behind the title of the presentation. So how many people, which are potentially much more creative than I was, are told that that's not something they should engage with, that that's not a viable career option, that art and creativity is not something to invest your life and your time into. And this is where this talk starts. The structure of the presentation is very much looking at giving you a little bit of a background around the creative economy, because I know some of you obviously are coming from different research areas, talking about our current knowledge in the area, specifically in relationship to graduates that then become obviously workers and creative careers, so how they perform in their career and their jobs. I will talk about the fact that we need a new framework, a perspective to look at creative work. At the moment, it's very undervalued. And part of the reason why it is undervalued is because of our poor understanding of how the creative economy works, but also poor investment in that understanding and that sector overall. And I will conclude with a call for action. So it takes a village, it takes all of us to change this, and I will obviously ask your help there. So in terms of terminology, some of you might be familiar with the creative industries. This is a list of industries, sometimes varies across countries, but that engage with original creative productions and content. This overlap with arts, digital media industries, other media and social media as a part of creative industry. So it's a big field of work, which, as I said, is often undervalued for its importance. Beyond creative industries, so the industries that produce these creative and cultural products and individuals individual in them, there are also a series of other creative jobs and occupation, which are people that are doing a creative job, so like being a designer, but they're not doing that in a creative industry. They might be doing that in a manufacturing sector. So there is a lot more creatives and creative jobs than there is just in the creative industries. And there is two other terms that are really interesting. One is creative entrepreneurs, which are both individuals that themselves work or try to make a business out of their living, and so overlap sometimes with this idea of a creative occupation and an industry in itself. The term that we use more broadly to incorporate all of this is the creative economy. I add a little bit of complexity to this, and in fact the term we want to use in our research on the creative economy in Africa is the creative economies, because we really want to acknowledge the diversity of culture or local ways of doing things, which sometimes don't fit the definition that are imposed by policy frameworks globally. And therefore I like this plurality, creative economies. These are all of the above activities, but looking also at amateur, informal, community-based activity that are not just economic businesses, but still make a real difference to people's life. So we've done a lot of research previously in Europe in the context of the UK and Europe, and then moved on to do more research with African and African partners. There are two key issues that really emerge within sector. One is the issues of access in terms of who studies creative disciplines, so who is empowered to take creative careers seriously. And what we have data there from the UK and from Africa, highlighting the struggle to actually tell your mom and dad what you want to do is be an artist in the future. And that's obviously a big initial barrier. There is another major barrier, which is entering the creative economy. So you now have struggled to get into a creative degree and get your family to back you. What happens after you graduate and you can't make a living out of your degrees and out of your career? So that is another barrier that emerges. So if we look at the research in UK and Europe, actually a lot of the things and the barriers are very similar, although in different contexts. So what we find is that there is an issue of access, that diversity of the creative sector is very poor, even in the UK, even in Europe. So the fact is that often social class predicts very much who is going to enter into creative discipline, and that social class is going to determine, obviously, what then gets produced in creative industry. So the range of privileges does not really just concern who's going to study arts, it's what kind of arts we're going to consume, and that's the arts of just some voices within our society, not all the voices that should be included in creative and cultural production. However, what we found when looking at European data is that actually arts and humanities students are the ones that are more concerned about making a difference in our society. They're concerned through that, through more volunteering, spending more hours within the community, and being actually more politically engaged. So they participate in social change and political action. So actually there are people that really want to contribute to society and make that difference. Across Africa, we looked through a collection, an edited book, to the condition of creative work and the role of higher education across different African countries. And again, a very common story there. Obviously, the recognition that creative careers are really important and the creative higher education can play a very important role within the sector, but more support is needed, more infrastructure. The collaboration are happening between the creative industries and higher education in Africa, but it's often done on a one-to-one basis, not in a structural way, without bringing forward the structure of the university to really engage with the sector. Again, a lot of training and facilitation is there, but not so much an understanding what skills are required within those industries and how those industries can contribute to the curriculum as well. And finally, in general, there is just not the creative ecosystem that supports these people that even after they are qualified, still really much struggle to prove their worth. So overall, these are the main issues, which, as I say, are not unique to Africa or the UK. They're almost, we could say, global issues. There is a lack of collaboration and a passing of the blame. It's the university fault. They're not training students good enough. It's the industry fault. They're choosing people they don't know. They're not giving people the right possibility. It's the family that doesn't want to support students in those careers. So that's one main issue where nobody is to be blamed. The lack of recognition and understanding of the sector. So nobody understand what are the form of works, how careers work in the creative industry. They're not standard careers, so if they're not standard, how can we make sure they're still viable? How can we make sure that we respond to those changes and needs required? And obviously, overall, in our society, an undervaluing of the contribution that arts, culture, and creativity make to our life. So we wake up in the morning, putting our radio on, consuming social media, checking our phones, enjoying some free content online, and we don't wonder who's producing that content for free and what kind of life they're having and how they make a living for themselves. So we are happy to consume culture. Culture is all around us. In this room, there's some beautiful artworks, which I'm sure are made by the University of Lagos Creative Arts Department. Again, we give it for granted. It's a nice background. We're not thinking who made it, what did they want to say to us, how is it making a difference. So how can this issue be addressed then if we know that this is the problem? So in the last few years, we're trying to put together a new understanding of creative work and creative careers, and based around the idea of capabilities, which some of you probably know from SENS contribution and research. And we look very much at the idea that if you think about sustainable creative careers, so who gets to be an artist, there's a lot of things that have to come together for that person to be empowered, to have the capability to become an artist. And this starts from a young age, where they're given access to arts, where they're able to go to the theater, where they be able encouraged to be creative. And it goes on to where did they go to a university course? Did they got funding to take some specific training or skills? So the framework we developed is this, and it's really centered around, if you want the capability to sustain creative practice and projects in our society, all of these has to come together. One of them is obviously developing skills. That's something that kind of we recognize as a university. That's what we do. That's our role. And often as a university, we finish there. We think that's our role, that's where we close business, that's all we do, and that's it. But obviously, this doesn't seem to be very much working for any of us. Yeah? Instead, what we really need to be thinking about is that the university can engage in a lot of other areas. They don't just train the students. They can facilitate their transition into work. They can go back and talk with alumni and think about how they impact the sector, what kind of research might be needed, how leadership could be developed in this sector. And it's even more broad than that. There are areas of collaboration where university can engage with a range of intermediaries and provide access to culture, provide training in schools, provide engagement with others to introduce different forms of culture, different understanding of culture. So now briefly, I want to give you an overview on how this is done by some of the projects that we supported as part of the African Hub for Sustainable Creative Economies. We just published a report, and that's available for free online, and I will share the link with you at the end of the presentation. But the idea behind this project was very much to test and push further the way in which universities can actively engage with the creative economies, not just with their own students, with the creative economies as an ecosystem in all sorts of possible ways. So we gave some small funding, some seed funding to organizations working in 3 different university partners. The University of Lagos was one of them, with the Stand in South Africa was the other one, and Nairobi in Kenya was the other one. Those little seed funding enabled 25 projects to get started and 25 collaboration, many of them involving academics and creatives, a lot of them just involving creatives. And on our YouTube channel, you can find all of the projects. All of the projects engage with sustainable development goals. This is also an amazing element of contribution of the creative economy. The creative economy is not in itself a field of the sustainable development goals, and that's because culture and creativity are looked at as a medium, as a way to engage across all of the sustainable development goals. And this is really where you can see that. We engage with all of them, some of them very heavily, like the first one, decent work, as being a very concern of the creative economy, providing decent work. Quality education was also very important, reducing inequality, so there were clear agendas there for what change could happen through this project. And just to give you a very quick insight on the project, so as you can see, this young Nigerian thespian was going into school and teaching students in secondary school what a creative career could look like, how they could make a living if they decided to pursue theater arts in their career. So really it was about the aspiration. It wasn't about getting a job. It was about raising the aspiration of people. Another project talking about innovative entrepreneurship, teaching graduates you reuse recycled materials to think about developing a business for themselves, thinking about those skills, entrepreneurial skills. Another one, bringing challenging documentaries into a community for the community to engage with important issues like mental health. So again, challenging the capability of people to engage with culture more broadly. Another one, starting a film festival association in South Africa, again, thinking about leadership and change, how university can take a leadership in supporting the sector to develop further. So all of these highlighted to us the importance of collaboration, of course, and the importance of sharing knowledge. Collaborative practice were important between academics and creatives, between creatives themselves working across different fields, but also and mainly working with communities and young people. That was very high on the agenda. And obviously, out of all of these comes the call for action, really. So what the creatives told us and what they really want to see happening is obviously funding, but not just funding for funding's sake. Funding that really helps them support their business, understand how to do things better, understand how to respond to the requirement of export or setting up a business. Enhancing knowledge and skill are very much a call for university to think about how they support specific needs of these creatives. Somebody with a creative arts degree, could they take a business course, a short course to support them and enable them to deliver a much better business output for their idea. So these kind of skills are really important. Again, really mentioning protecting the careers and the work of workers, and really recognizing that everything that we have around us is a creative contribution that needs to be acknowledged and paid. And thank you to all the IT people here, which are doing an amazing job and maybe under-recognized and undervalued by us. Finally, celebrating and supporting creativity. Again, how much do we celebrate how important arts and culture are for us to tell a story about our community, to tell our own stories and all of that. So really, really valuable lessons there. Finally, in the conclusion, a reminder, it takes a village. So it takes a village means that we don't only need funding and investor to the creative economy to grow, we need everyone to be involved in the creative economy and backing it up. Higher education can play a very important role, but it can't be alone. It can't do that on its own. It needs to really engage with the sector to find out what the needs are and what the common work can be. It takes a village means there is a need for an ecosystem, and I really would like every one of you to go out of here and think about how you can make a difference, whether it is by buying a piece of artwork, supporting a craft person, whether it is within your own university, talking to your students, thinking about their next career move and whether they can contribute to the creative economy and what that can be. And where, if you are a little bit higher up in the university policy system, again, talk about the creative economy and how important it is for changing people's lives. And I'm going to thank you here and invite you to go and download the full report.
Thank you very much. I think with that, I don't know whether there's any sector left. I don't think so. I don't think any sector. I mean, creative, this thing, has been really, really present. Although I nearly challenged your data for Nigeria, where somebody was painting the picture that, oh, it's not popular. No. Nollywood has changed the dynamics of, creative arts in Nigeria. And as a former Vice Chancellor involved with admission of students, one thing we used to gauge the popularity of a program, first is the cutoff of admission. What percentage cutoff being used? Once upon a time, it used to be medicine, where the cutoff is almost 70-something percent, 80%. Creative arts, theater arts, probably about equivalent of about 45% here about. But, unbelievable transformation. Theater arts had 1 year 80% cutoff, whereas medicine was 70-something percent. And we are wondering, it's like one way or the other, they are seeing the the potential of that, creative economy, as you call it. So, thank you very much. I'm sure people will have questions. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're at this stage now when we have, I think we have 4 presentations. Because you can ask questions or make comments on the presented by him, and then the 3 panelists. Okay? I'm sure you have noted, So, just identify yourself, and then your question or comment. Okay? We have, so I just identify, well, you have 2, at least this first set. Okay? 3, okay. Okay, yeah. 4, 5, okay, I leave it to 5 in this side. People on this other side, I come back to you. Let's deal with this side first. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Identify yourself, and then please make it fast. They've given the lecture, so don't give another lecture. Okay.
Thank you very much, the moderator. I must thank the presenters. My name is Vio Korea from Obafemi Awolowo University. And I thank the presenters once again. Now, if we must have the student of the future, we must actually have the teachers of the future. And that brings me to the earlier comment I made at the side meeting we have. The kingdom of God runs on righteousness, but the kingdom of higher education runs on effective funding. How do we fund in-service training for the teachers of the future? We need new curriculum. We need teachers to be trained. So how do we fund that? That's question number 1. Question number 2, sir. I ran into a group of people who carried big banner saying big banks have stolen our future. That was in Wisconsin, Madison. In South Africa, I also ran into a group of students who are saying fee must fall. And in my own Obafemi Awolowo University, I ran into a group of students who were chanting war songs, Aluta Unlimited, all because of fee. How do we provide for sustainable funding for students? I'm amazed by the number of students we have in University of Ghana. Please, may you teach us the more. What is the dropout rate? How many students drop out and how many people complete? Because that's 776,000 students. It's not a joke. So please, and I would like to learn more from people from WIT. How are you handling the issue of fees? Because my own students, we need money to support them. So please teach us how to get money to support students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, next.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all the presenters. You have done well. Oluyomi Piton from Lead City University, Ibadan, and also University of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Now, my question is to the main presenter. You know, when you started, you talked about starting from the primary school. And as an economist, educationist, I know that Sakharapoulos and the others have carried out a study, and they believe that primary education is the bedrock. We need to start from there. Now, when you were giving your talk, you did not give any recommendation as regarding that. And yesterday, even in my own presentation, you know, about linking policies, higher education policy to labor market policy, I mentioned it yesterday, that there is need for provision of quality education right from the primary school level through high school and down to university. So please, I just want you to say something about how we can concentrate more on primary education. From my experience in South Africa, many of the children that come to university, it's like the background, the foundation is faulty, especially, sorry to use the word, the less advantaged universities. That we have to have a coaching class for them before they could cope. Okay. So that's my question to you, sir. Then secondly, from our speaker from WIT University, you talked about student support. Now in South Africa, there is what we call silent stratification. You have talked excellently about what you are doing in your university, but we have carried out a study where we used both the less privileged and the privileged universities. What we found out is that there are some universities that are doing excellently well, whereas there are some that are just neglected. Let me use that word. The reputation, and these are the things that we count on employability. These are the things that employers of labor will look at, the reputation and the geographical location. Please, can you talk about that? Thank you.
Later.
Okay. Thank you. Peter Maassen from University of Oslo. I want to congratulate the presenters. This was a fascinating and important session, and it showed us a key feature of the challenges that we face and the realities in which we are working. And that's the issue of, and please forgive me for using the term diversity. Diversity in student body, diversity in the kind of activities that we're involved in. We have preparing for research, we have the creative industry, we have lifelong learning. So how are we going to deal with that diversity, that growing diversity in a traditional setting? And that traditional setting is that higher education is part of the way in which education is traditionally organized, K-12 for everyone, and then for the happy few, which have become more and more and more, higher education. We have to rethink that model and link higher education much more to not the labor market, but professional practices in all kinds of settings. Whether it's a research professional setting or a creative setting or setting in the private sector or in the public sector. How are we going to realize that in a world where also, and referring to Mr. September's presentation, the funding, the public funding that's now going into higher education will increasingly be moved to lifelong learning. So we not only have to think about lifelong learning skills for students, but also what is our role going to be in the lifelong learning activities that will become more and more part of professional realities in the changing complexities of our labor markets. Thank you.
Okay.
Professor Timothy Samuel Jide, independent researcher. I work in Unilag for almost 37 years. Now is Professor...
With experience in...
French studies.
Okay. Oh, I thought you had experience in...
Okay, in the morning. Yes, I wanted something on archaeology in the morning. I still want something. I want to dig...
In archaeology?
Yes. Well, leave archaeology alone. Let's face this. Well, Nkrumah, you know, is number one, but he had an elder brother, not 1957, but 1955, Pa Obafemi Awolowo. Free education in 1955, just an addendum to that Ghanaian vision for Africa. Pa Obafemi Awolowo, free education, not 1957, but 1955. Thank you.
Thank you. One more on this side?
Yes.
Okay, we are finished.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
My name is Mary Kenoti from the University of Nairobi's Department of Public Health. Thank you for the presentations this afternoon. They have been very interesting. Nobody's doubting, we are all laughing. But after so many years teaching in the university, supervising students, going through a lot of research, I've realized that the connection between research and implementation is a very winding gap. We don't translate what we have in the universities. So I know there are a lot of research that is getting dust on our shelves, but the users, the policymakers in Kenya are still in silos. That I can say with a lot of confidence. And until research gives us the desired impact, then we have done zero work. Can we do something? Thank you.
Okay, this side. Oh, I thought you would say that whatever you wanted to say had been said by this side. Okay, give the mic. Oh, okay, I'm coming.
Good afternoon, and thank you to all the presenters for today. It has been insightful, but something I still feel is missing. I want to thank the first speaker, the professor from Ghana, who spoke about the fact that we need to shift from the deficit argument and do more with the energy that we have, the good things that we are doing. We should project them, even though we know that there are issues, within the system. Thank you for that. And I have this impression that many of our universities, especially in Africa, tend to prepare students with the intention that they have come to campus to fail. And why I'm saying that is because we are here in this room, and many of our teachers need to understand that when you come to class, there are some things you should not say. For example, you say, people don't pass my course. Nobody scores 70 in my course. And I'm now linking that to research, because we are now in an environment of researchers. We also find journals who tell us about their rejection rate. They do not tell us about their acceptance rate. They tell us about their rejection rate. And that's a way of pushing, the ECRs away, from that. And even some of us who think that we are not early careers, even think twice before, applying, especially when you see the rejection rate. That said, I also wanted to call attention, and this goes to all the speakers. You reeled out data to us about student enrollment and things like that. And all the data told us about 40% and 60% and this and that. But that brings me to my who question, which I am always asking. Who are those 40%? Who are those 60%? Whatever percentage you have presented. Our experience, we did a tracking study in the University of Ibadan to find out about gender. We wanted to see, currently as we speak, the university is at their convocation ceremony. And we have found a trend of over more than 5 years that during the convocation, the first degrees, we have girls take all the prizes. They are the best in the statistics, best in maths, best in this. And then when it's time for enrollment into masters, we find maybe half of them come back for masters. By the time they are getting to PhD, maybe none of them come back. So this dropout rate is important for us to also to tease the gender aspect of all of these. It's very important, and I want you to say something about that. And lastly, I wanted to call attention to Prof. September's island, the island you drew. How are you creating that linkage? I mean, when you said, okay, they don't have to swim, bridges can be created. So how are you creating that linkage, and how can we adopt that method within our various universities? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, one can confirm your statistics for me, Badam. You said that female students collecting all the prizes during graduation. I said I can confirm that. But have you done any research about what has led to that?
Yes, sir. That's actually
Don't worry. The female students send the male students on errands most of the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to add a few comments. Maybe just say the presentation of Professor Kwame was very interesting. And when he spoke about the training of the teachers, I just wanted to call at his attention that in my country, for instance, this year, we had 2,000 teachers that went to Canada. And we already were lacking teacher. We had 8,000 teachers missing in our national budget. And On the top of that, we lost 2,000 teachers. So the primary education issue, for me, is going to be key in the future. If we don't solve, as Africans, especially Francophone Africa, where we're going to see a large amount of teachers going. And the consequence of that is that we are going to speed up the training process, and the new teachers won't be ready enough. So the next generation of children are going to be sacrificed. And that's very a worriness, a worriness cry. I want to take your attention on that. Secondly, about the future of the universities in Africa, there is a topic concerning sustainability and environmental issues. I think it's not taken very, very seriously in our universities, because we need to realize that in terms of using the resources, the energy resources, we're going to have to take into benefit what nature gave us, the sun, the waterfalls, and we need to focus on that, because we have one of the second biggest carbon well in Central Africa. So we need to preserve that. This is very, very important. And the next generation of students need to understand that whatever they do, in whatever jobs they're going to have, we're going to have a strategy and to implement that strategy. Otherwise, we're going to go in the wrong road. And just lastly, we didn't speak about the university business model. I think this is a very key topic. If we want to keep our best researchers here in Africa, we need to reinvent a business model. Because in Francophone Africa, for example, the budget of the universities, solely rely on the public spending, and it's not possible because government have so many priorities. And if we want to keep those researchers, because there's nothing more disheartening for a researcher to leave because he can get grants somewhere else and he doesn't progress in his country. It's disheartening for the researchers. And so that's for me the key, to think about other way of,
Thank you.
The budget. Thank you.
Which country is that? Sorry, I didn't get it. Which country? Huh? Senegal. Okay.
Thank you very much, presenters. Greatly appreciated. I'm Professor Pamela Machaganja from Zimbabwe Africa University. Just the first presenter on curriculum development, just to maybe think about how we can stretch our thinking into the student of the future in the context of curriculum, linking pedagogy, andragogy, utragogy, in order to empower our student who is more creative within the futuristic context. Then secondly, also, as we also think about research and empowering our students, maybe to rethink about empowering our students in the context of intellectual property rights, so that as we co-create knowledge and all the entities within praxis of research, we also appreciate what our young scholars and researchers who are very creative and innovators, so that we can empower them, they know their rights. Because just as much as we have predator journals, we might have senior researchers who might be predators on young scholars in terms of sifting their knowledge as the first creators of ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more? At least two more from this side. Yep.
Thank you very much, all the presenters. The keynote presentation was fascinating, but the takeaway from it is that young talents exist and abound in Africa, but oftentimes in silos, or they are not discovered, or they are exported to the outside world. I'm just trying to make a suggestion that can ARUA think of something of engaging the political class, not at the national level, but at the continental level. Now, if ARUA has come together and galvanize the resources of various universities for research? Can ARUA have a desk at the AU, for example, such that they keep this idea in the front burner and it doesn't wait for the political differences in different nations? Some nations are committed to funding education and research, but some other people keep it in the backwaters. That's just my concern. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The last one.
Thank you very much. My name is Omolabake Fakunle, University of Edinburgh, and my point relates to the last two contributions, and of course the very, very interesting and very inspiring, keynote messages and the plenary we've heard. What is the role of mentoring in all we're talking about? More advanced career researchers mentoring younger ECRs. And how do we make connections between African scholars around the continent as well as African scholars in the diaspora? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, really, at least we have 10, and then questions in different areas. So I don't know. Well, we start from the keynote speaker.
I think that because of maybe time constraint, I'll just pick on one question. The question about basic education, and somebody asked about primary education and Sakharopoulos' study. I think this is an example of why we need to research that can challenge other research. Sakharopoulos' study was very influential in what the World Bank did, and it had a direct impact on their investment on higher education. Since then, there are other studies that have said that wasn't actually, I wouldn't put it correct, but it was overstated in one way or the other. So we do need to also engage with that. And I think that higher education must pay attention to what happens there and be part of that debate, because we are receiving products from primary education, basic education. And they are the ones we are training to become the next scientists, the next teachers. So it's all linked. And I think this is the point I was making. And Nkrumah did not see higher education in isolation. He saw it as a pinnacle. You don't start from basic education, you start from higher education. Because that's where you make sure you produce your your quality products who can then infuse and change the whole system. And that is what I think ARUA is doing very well. So that's my comment.
Thank you. I'm going to do the same and take one and make a very small comment on a second one. And it is the question around how we did that. So what we decided to do was to develop a student success framework. And it was originally led by the Senior Director for Academic Affairs, who had a cup of coffee with the Dean of Student Affairs, which is myself, to begin a conversation around how we think about what it is that we're doing in the very island kind of way. And so it was a meeting of minds that then led to us identifying as part of that process who the key partners would be, including students themselves. And so along the journey, as we were beginning to think about, for example, the first year intervention that I mentioned, it also meant myself and her actively actually going to each faculty board meeting to convince the faculties that perhaps this is a good thing to do. And on the side, lots of coffee with lots of people who you couldn't perhaps convince in a forum like this, but that you could perhaps have a deeper conversation with over a cup of coffee. But it was around this common idea of how do we focus the university on the student success agenda, and how do we take all the various elements into account as we journey along that way. So in that process, we even spoke to security and to cleaning services around the role of the security guard, around the role of the cleaner in the residence. And so it was a very inclusive kind of process, but around, and it was a development of a framework, which was eventually approved at the University Senate, which then gave us kind of that formal authority to kind of also begin to pull people together. But before it went to Senate, it was lots of coffee and lots of informal conversation around a central idea of a university focused on student success. Quickly, on the fees, I don't think, well, WITS has certainly not resolved the fees issue in South Africa. It's an issue that the whole system is grappling with. And fees must fall, I think, was bound to happen given the extent of fee increases that happened prior to that. But the big question perhaps is also around how we think around the social contract, how we think about what it means, the value of higher education in our society, and how perhaps we reprioritize our spending, but also how we partner with this village idea, how we partner within this village to make it affordable for all of our students. Thank you.
Well, I think I also just make a comment about the issue of funding. The University of Ghana does not have any special funding mechanism. We are facing the same challenges as all other African universities, where you have to balance fees that are affordable, not to exclude a vast majority of the citizens from accessing higher education, and then also with the reality of the cost of running an institution. The way we have managed to survive is through two mechanisms, which is research grants, which is obvious. The other thing that many of our units have done is to have what we call special programs, which cater to specific, constituencies, which can pay realistic fees. And so by running special programs alongside the regular programs, the units are able to subsidize the running of the regular programs because of the fees that the special programs can pay. So that's one mechanism to survive. But it's a problem that we have. Even at lunch, we were talking about it today with my colleagues, about the fact that in Ghana, we need to have this conversation about funding for universities, because it's not sustainable on the current track where government investment in the universities is going down, and they have put a hold on the fees. The government doesn't want you to increase fees. So how do you make the numbers work? So there's nothing special. We are facing the same problems. Thank you.
I just wanted to quickly pick up the last question on the mentorship. For our project, it was very important that there was that mentorship embedded in the project. So in the duration of the 15 months, we had for 12 months, 3 young research assistants based, one at the University of Lagos, one at the University of Nairobi, one at Witwatersrand. And it was all about supporting them to develop their research skills, to really engage with the project international component, as well as obviously the local context, and how they would connect with the local practitioners. And those 3 researchers are now still working and collaborating with the university. They have been co-authors of the report, so again, being very much made part of any development from the project. And you can read within the report actually what the project has meant for them in terms of their own career development and where they're going next. So I think it is important that within any project where university is engaging with young researchers, whether they are based in Africa, whether they are diaspora researchers that are based in the UK or in Europe, that we really think about this, how these students, these early career researchers are supported throughout and shown in different ways what different paths there are within academia and beyond to try and engage with the sector.
Well, thank you very much. I think this has really been a wonderful session. I mean, we had highly stimulating lecturers. We thank for the high level of preparing that you really prepared your lectures. And there's no doubt that from the interactions, from the floor, I mean, people really appreciated it. Although I must say, you have not answered all their questions.
We can continue.
No. We'll continue during that because somebody has one important question. And that has to do with, he said that most of the research, yes, we are saying we should do research for development, to tackle our developmental challenges. And people do the research, but the results at times cannot be translated to tackling the development unless it's actually, undergoes innovation to probably, commercialization. All one can say is, in Nigeria, we learned that lesson from South Africa. In South Africa, there are two different types of funding. They have the National Research Fund, which also in Nigeria, we have National Research Fund. In there, you fund research. People will write their proposals and they get funds. Quite substantial amount that we had in there. But how about we now had in the system research results that really could be commercialized to make a difference in the economy. But there's no funding for that. And the individual researchers cannot. At times you see some university trying to commercialize, but that's not the work of the university. But in South Africa, they have what is called National Innovation Fund. So the National Innovation Fund is used to fund research results that has market value. I think this is the type of thing that we probably should take home if we are to really make sure that our research makes a difference to tackling developmental challenges. Well, I think on behalf of all of us, we thank you very much. We've really gained. All I can say is that I think we have a rapporteur. Sir, we have a rapporteur. And I believe that they will try as much as possible to catch. And whatever they come up with will be available to all of us. So it means that you will get it. If you have light, your email, we'll send it through your email. And I hope you'll be able to access it, but don't worry. So, you have been fantastic all day because I took like I said, intentionally I was looking around to see whether I would see somebody singing. That is sleeping and everybody alert. So I think you should clap for yourself.
Thank you very, very, very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all panelists and our keynote speaker. We've come to the end of the fourth plenary session. The parallel sessions are supposed to begin in 5 minutes. So I will encourage you to grab a cup of tea and move. The only reason why we cannot delay the start of the parallel sessions is that there are people who are waiting to do presentations from outside. Yesterday we kept them waiting for more than 1 hour. I don't think it's fair to. So please grab a cup of coffee and then move on there. After the parallel sessions, we'll be happy to see you board the buses to dinner at the conference dinner. Thank you very, very much.
Please listen to the announcements. The Vice Chancellor is organizing a tour to the National Museum tomorrow. That's after the last keynote address. If you're interested, please see Mrs. Stella Amoa. She's sitting at the back so that you can register. Spaces are limited. This evening, at the end of the parallel sessions, please enter your regular buses. Those who will go for dinner already know themselves. Once you get to your hotel, if you are not going for dinner, just drop. And then the bus will take those who are going to dinner to the venue of the dinner.